So I'd like to introduce our first speakers today, Elaine Byrne, who's the services manager at StJoseph Shankill, and Bolger, who's the PCDC lead.
Good morning. Firstly, myself and some of my colleagues have had the pleasure of meeting Kevin, and I just want to say thank you for sharing so much of your story with us this morning. Real inspiration and a hard act to follow now, and just to say thank you to both Kevin and Helena. So thank you. Good morning, everybody. We're delighted to be here presenting at the 13th International Dementia Conference. My name is Elaine Byrne, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Bolger. And I'll also give a shout out to another colleague, Siobhan Grant, is in the background, and she's keeping us all in check this morning.
Hi, thanks Elaine. I'm Anne, and I am a self-confessed wellness freak who loves, yes, I'm one of those people who loves sunrise sea swims, one of those annoying people, but I don't have a dry rope, okay? Just put that out there. I'm the mother of an 18 and 20-year-old girls who challenge me every day and get very embarrassed by the fact that I do dress up because it's part of our model of care to make moments special for work. And yes, I am a former trapeze artist, but that's a story for another day.
Hi, I'm Elaine Byrne. I'm a sporting fanatic, but not trapezing. I do play hockey and tennis, and I love watching every sport, football, big Man United fan. I'm a proud mother of 3 perfect children, and I'm married to my husband Fergal for the last 18 years. I'm also the chief dog walker in the house, but not by choice most of the time. So we are coming to you live from StJoseph's in Shankill in South County Dublin, where we provide specialist dementia care for people living with dementia using a social model of care. That's called the butterfly model, and it's accredited by Meaningful Care Matters in the UK. We're also the proud recipients of the Charity Impact Award in 2020, and in 2021 we received Investing in Volunteers Award, the first nursing home to achieve that award. Today we've been invited to present to you our 2 initiatives that we introduced during the COVID-19 pandemic to support resilience and well-being of carers. So what can you expect from today's short presentation? To start with, Anne will be speaking with you and demonstrating, you'll see it firsthand, the Feelings First resource, which the team do each morning together before they start work. Following Anne's presentation, I'll then walk you through our staff care app, and that was developed in the 2nd month of COVID in May 2020. And I'll be showing you examples of the resources and the supports developed for staff and our volunteers. So I'll pass you over to Anne.
Thanks, Elaine. So yes, we're going to talk with you about feelings matter most today. And really, truly, we would say in our model of care, the butterfly model, our motto is that feelings do matter most. So we know that when people are experiencing a dementia, sometimes when their cognitive abilities decline, they begin to communicate with the world through their feelings. It's very important for us to recognize the emotional well-being of the people who work here in StJoseph's. And that's why when I took over my new role as person-centered dementia care lead in May 2020, we were in the midst of the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure we all remember. I noticed that staff were showing the effects of working through such a stressful time in different ways. I think we're all different in how we show our emotions. The challenge was, how would I create a support that would benefit everybody and be easy to implement? So Feelings First was developed in response to an internal audit that we carried out in June 2020. Staff expressed an increase in stress levels, especially in relation to keeping everybody here in the care home safe and also their own families safe. Life as they knew it had stopped abruptly, and they were struggling to care for their emotional well-being in this new normal we all suddenly found ourselves. We felt it was more important than ever to care for the carers, as the most neglected part of person-centered care is often self-care. So yes, it's all about that self-love. So how do we do this? How does this look in practice? Well, each morning, the staff in each lodge that we have in StJoseph sit around the kitchen table. In fact, I was just in one of the lodges this morning for one of our lovely circles. So this is a typical morning after we have our handover. We sit around. You can see that we put colored discs on the table, and each disc relates to an emotion that you might be feeling. So each person gets a chance to share how they're feeling that morning. They're listened to, there's absolutely no judgment, and they don't have to elaborate on what's going on for them. Staff express that putting words on how they're feeling helps lower stress levels, it improves communication with their team, and it promotes teamwork. They also feel it helps them enter into the feeling world of the people that are living here in StJoseph's with dementia. And it's like a bridge between their home life and their work life. So they can almost step from one world into the other one more easily as a result of sharing how they're feeling with their colleagues. So I'd like to introduce a sharing circle to whoever is watching this morning, and hopefully that we can do a virtual sharing circle together. Now, it won't be the same as being together in real life. There's nothing like that person to person. But let's just take a moment. I'd like to invite you to take a moment to put your hands on your belly as you're sitting in the chair and just take a deep breath in. So breathe all the way in until you feel your hands move out. And then breathe back in and you feel your hands move down. And I'd like you to take another breath all the way in. This time, as you breathe out, just let your shoulders drop down and let yourself sink right down into the chair fully. And now one more breath all the way in. And as you breathe out, just see if you can just let yourself really settle into this moment, into this present moment, the only moment that we have. So take a moment to become aware of how you're feeling. Maybe you'll think about what did you have to go through to be here today? What did you have to leave behind? Maybe you had to drop the kids off, or there's stuff going on in the house, or you're thinking about dinner tonight. So let's just take a moment to let all that out of your mind, put it aside for a moment, to give this moment just to you, for your own self, to look after your own emotional well-being. So we're going to look at the colors now on the screen, and we're going to see if you can identify, is there any color there that you could identify with how you're feeling right now? Now, there can be lots of different emotions you could have. This is just a few of the main ones. Often people say, well, actually, Anne, I'm a rainbow today. Somebody actually said that this morning. Often people will say, well, I'm actually stressed right now, but I'm pretty sure I'll be yellow by later on. So I'll probably be happy. So we're never just one thing, are we? We're often a few. So imagine we're sitting at the table. It's your turn to share. So try and name a feeling, 1, 2, 3, that you're feeling right now in this moment. And just see what that feels like to put a name on it. So I obviously, because it's not my natural forte to be here speaking online like this. So there was a certain amount of stress involved this morning. But also, I'm very, very happy to be sharing such a simple tool that we've created and that has been so effective in supporting the wonderful people that work here and give so much of their love in themselves every day, so selflessly. So we wanted to give back to them. So I'm really happy about that. So I'll just share with you for a moment now. These are some of the comments. I asked my colleagues in the last 2 weeks, so what have you got from the circle? Because, we introduced it the end of last summer. So one of them said, which I thought was lovely, I'd rather be sad for a few minutes and get support from my colleagues and then feel better for the rest of the day. Somebody else said, someone was angry the other morning when they came into work. It was good that we understood the way they were feeling, because then we didn't take it personally. And just to share, I was at a sharing circle one morning and one of my colleagues was standing right on the outside. She didn't want to sit down, but I still included her in the circle. So I just said, would you like to pick a color? So she came over, she picked the color black, which was sad, instantly burst out crying, and she ran away. So obviously I followed it up with her later with some chocolate and tea and a chat, just to see if she wanted to share anything, no pressure. And she just said something very sad had happened to her in her family the day before. And interestingly enough, some of the staff had felt that she maybe was cross with them before she shared that. So it really helped us to understand that maybe that person in that day we could really look after them, in that we could ask them, would you like to take your break early? Can we get you something from out of the shops? Just little things that make all the difference in the day. So that was a lovely example of it, in action. And there's many of those. And I hope that you yourself maybe can feel that even by putting a name on it, maybe you felt some little, support for yourself this morning. And that's what we wanted to share. So thank you so much for listening. It's lovely to have the opportunity to be here. And I'll pass over to my colleague, Elaine now.
Great, Anne. Thanks very much. Thanks for sharing that and hopefully showing everybody exactly how we look after and what we do here for the resilience and well-being of the carers. I'm going to just talk to you about our staff care app, and I suppose we introduced this back in May 2020, and it's a digital companion for all the staff here. So it's at your fingertips. You can access it on your smartphone, and it's content that we hope will support them and has supported them over the last year and a half. So we carry on. What's the staff care app all about? I'm going to introduce you to two of the users. So this is John. John is one of the many, many dedicated and wonderful healthcare assistants in StJoseph's. He has a young family at home, and he has worked really hard to keep us all safe and well. He enjoys keeping fit, eating healthy, and has an interest in self-care. John is looking for some resources he can use to support him when he's on his breaks in work. Now let's meet Aoife. Aoife is one of 200 fabulous volunteers in StJoseph's. She dedicates her time supporting us in our aims and our ambitions to provide an inclusive and community-based volunteer programme. Like many of us, Aoife is anxious about spreading COVID-19 to her family and friends, and this is creating what she describes as COVID anxiety. Aoife is looking for a platform that can help and support her with these worries and anxieties. So how can we support John and Aoife? Say hello to StJoseph's Care app. We developed the app to ensure our staff and volunteers were getting the best support and access to information they could use, especially at the time of stress and increase in mental health pressures. So we partnered with Centre Health to create a digital health solution, now known as our Staff Care app, to respond to our needs and support our colleagues. StJoseph's Staff Care app was developed in a very short space of time and customised to meet our requirements. So I'll take you through the app and show you how we supported John and Aoife. To start with, there is a self-screen survey. This self-screening COVID-19 assessment provides you with recommended feedback, and just from the comfort of your own smartphone. You can see you're going through all the questions there, and these are all based on the HSE guidelines. So you'll answer each one of them, and then by the end of it, you'll get a thumbs up to say that everything is okay. And there it is. And we'll just go back and take a look at the self-screen survey again. So if you had to answer yes to one of those questions, it'll provide with advice of what to do next. And again, there's a link into the HSE site there too. So moving on to the next section, which is our wellbeing section. And this is broken down into different areas, which again can be designed to include what you want and what you need. And it can easily be changed and updated so that you can keep the content current and engagement high. We have a link to the HSE Mind Your Wellbeing programme that's provided through the HSE, our employee assistance programme, and grounding exercises, just to name a few. So let's go back a moment and just see how the app supported Aoife and John. Aoife finds that the daily COVID symptom monitor and the daily reminders on the Staff Care app, they help her ease her worries and anxieties. Aoife likes yoga, and she enjoys the different choices of yoga classes within the app, and she says that this helps her relax. John enjoys connecting with the app as well, and he does this on his break times using the grounding exercises section developed by our OT colleagues in St. John of God Hospital. There are 3 videos in this section, all exploring skills which can be helpful in managing overwhelming feelings or intense anxieties. The videos provide grounding skills through two specific approaches: sensory awareness and cognitive awareness. On the screen, you will see one of the videos playing. This is the 5-finger breathing exercises, which John says helps him relax when he's on his breaks at work and gives him that time out before he returns. So we'll come out of the well-being and we'll go into our learn section. So we were trying to think of the information that people would like to see and also to provide something that people could access quickly. So we started off with the HSE COVID nursing home resources. Again, this is linked to the HSE. So you know all that information is up to date and current. Further sections contain the about COVID-19, which is details including what the signs are and who's at risk, for example. We also have a guide for anyone who is recovering from COVID-19. And then we also thought that it would be of benefit if the resources provided were in different formats, such as videos or posters. So there is a variety of formats to make it accessible to all. We even have 2 of our staff members featured in the donning and doffing PPE videos. And finally, we added a section which provides guidance to staff and volunteers of children going back to school. So then we move on to the What Matters to Us section, and that's staff and volunteer led. And it's really just being currently developed at the moment. And then finally, we have 2 other areas: the announcement and updates and the contact us section. So you can go into the contact us, and that includes members of the team, and they can be contacted directly through the app and by email either. So that's it kind of gives you a very a quick view of what the staff app is. As I say, there's a few elements of it that we're currently developing. So the next bit is what lies ahead. So we've come up with a few kind of ideas and plans for what we're going to do and how we're going to develop the app in the future. We're going to look at the staff team wellness. So we're going to bring in even a bigger kind of focus in the app there as well. And the What Matters to Us section. So that really is a platform for staff to share things that, you know, that they like, what's important to them. It could be a good book, or, you know, it could be a podcast that they've listened to that they think people might like to hear. And then also we look at maybe offers that we'll be able to put up onto that as well, and potentially as a communications tool. So we'll use it as a news feed. So just to say thank you very much for inviting myself and Anne to speak with you this morning. And I hope you enjoyed our presentation on resilience and well-being of carers. Thank you.
Thanks so much. That was very enlightening. A question has come in. They're asking who manages the app and ensures that all the information is up to date.
Yeah, so that is, of course, a challenge, but actually an opportunity there as well, because you can find there'll be a lot of your colleagues who are interested in, you know, updating content. So initially that was something that kind of myself and some of the admin team would have done in terms of the content and what initially went up on it. But the company we partnered with, Centre Health, they were also really helpful in terms of the content that went on the app. And now at the moment it's led by, we have a couple of people on a team that we lead the app. So you will need to have a bit of kind of time and resources to dedicate into it if you did decide to do it, because if it's not, that's what we've learned, if it's not current, the engagement isn't going to be high. So you have to feed it in order for it to, you know, to be successful.
We also have a question that's come in if the app can be shared with the HSE, since it sounds brilliant. So maybe you can connect with Fiona in the chat. I think she wants some additional information. Thanks so much, ladies. So now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Carmel Geoghegan, who's founder of Dementia Ireland, as well as being a family carer. So over to you, Carmel.
Thank you, Kim. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here this morning, and a heartfelt thanks to Kim and Manuela and all the team at Engaging Dementia for inviting me today. And I'm going to talk about my own experience and what I learned from it as a primary carer, and about striking the balance and putting your own oxygen mask on first, which I didn't do. after following those presentations, they're inspiring. The app, I have to say, is unbelievable. And yeah, I'd love to see HSE plus the private sector taking something like that on board for their carer staff. This is probably an image of how I felt a lot of the time. And I know this morning on the poll that Kim did, there was only Patty and Helena and myself, but hopefully more carers have joined. So I just want I would love the healthcare professionals that are in the audience and the academics, that you realize that all of us are touched, and the majority of us will have a family member or a friend who will develop dementia. And it's something that we all have to realize. And as Kevin had said, and which my mom was told, it was part of the aging process. It's not part of the aging process. So for the years, I hung on by my fingernails, pretty scary, not knowing what was happening. I'll just give you a brief, again, 2010 seems to be the year Kevin took off to Australia. I didn't realize that. My dad got very ill in October 2010, and he went into hospital, and he was there till mid-December. It turned out he had advanced bowel cancer, so I took him home to die, and we had 12 nights at home, and it was that really bad winter. But also my mom came to live here because it was easier to look after everybody together. And we had noticed mom wasn't herself. She had withdrawn. She was complaining she couldn't hear us. We took her for a hearing test, all of that, but there was nothing. And anyway, after Dad passed away, so January 2011, I took her to a gerontologist and then a neurologist, he recommended. And we had the MRI and the various tests, and that's when we got the diagnosis of a mixed dementia, vascular and frontotemporal. So I hadn't a clue. I'd never heard of dementia. I'd heard of Alzheimer's, and the vascular made sense because she was constantly having mini strokes, and osteoporosis had been diagnosed, and that's what had been looked at for so long. So that's how my roller coaster of a journey for the next few years started. No supports. We left him, unlike Helena, we got no information leaving the neurologist, just gave us the diagnosis, and we went home with no signposting, nowhere to contact. The GP we went back to, and he's like, well, it's the aging process. And he'd actually had mom on a very high dosage of antidepressants. And then, of course, the antipsychotic, various types were prescribed, which I refused to give mom because it just made her sleep. And I didn't want my mom to go. So hindsight is a great thing. And now looking back, if we had got just a few simple sheets like what I'm showing you now, the warning signs, mom had all of the above, but we didn't know what that was. The sensory challenges, her hearing was touch. She would touch hot things without realizing it, burning herself. Her taste changed. She wanted spicy food, which living in the west of Ireland, mom, growing up in the 30s, 40s, they wouldn't have been used to curry and that. So these were all like incredible things, and I just didn't know what was wrong with her. The hydration, I didn't understand. Mom was constantly having UTIs, had no idea. A lot of the time they got advanced, and delirium set in. Didn't understand any of that either. So these are all very simple, basic things that should have been addressed in the beginning. So from this, I suppose, I started to see what was needed. That was how my life changed. I wanted building awareness, that social exclusion that we started to feel, the misunderstanding of the diagnosis. It got out in the village that mom had Alzheimer's. She didn't, but everyone thought it was Alzheimer's. There was only the one type. And to give you an example of how that affected us, the bank manager in this little rural town in the west of Ireland decided, he heard mom had Alzheimer's, and he decided she didn't know what she was doing. So he wouldn't give her access to her money to buy a wheelchair and an exercise bike. So you can see how frustrating this was. I had to make mom award court. So from that time, I saw that there was a huge gap around education, but of course I didn't understand how to address that. So I now see caring for the carer supporter, how important it is that we put ourselves first, our mental and physical well-being, that we don't go into the state that we suffer from burnout, and that we look at time for me time. And of course, after, when your loved one goes, we have to look at bereavement and how that affects us. The stress, I suppose, was just probably something that comes naturally. And of course, I'm one of these people that works best under stress, a small level. I'm one of I leave everything to the last minute. That's when I get motivated. But unfortunately, the longer stress levels have significant impact on our lives. And your body reaction to the change, the demand, that's what stress is, the anger, the frustration, the anxiety, what things create stress in our lives. Well, lack of information, nobody listening to us, no supports, absolutely no supports. And the only person who helped us was the community nurse. And she was just amazing. And it turned out she was going through a similar journey with her own dad, who was actually later diagnosed with early onset. He was in his 60s. So yes, the stress had major impact on my physical and mental health. And I learned this the hard way. I coped day to day, as most of us do. We try our best. We try to keep the best foot forward. We don't want to look like we're weak. We don't want to feel that we're feeling the negative emotions. We start to get low self-esteem. We're feeling helpless. We're afraid. We're criticizing ourselves. And I suppose my biggest fear was that they would take mom from me. And that was her biggest fear, to be put into a nursing home, which she did not want under any circumstances. And like, there are 64,000 diagnosed with dementia in Ireland at the moment, and 63% of that live at home, which is where the majority of us want to live. So we need to look at social prescribing for ourselves and not feel guilty. Take that time out. You don't have to go around looking calm and serene all the time when you're actually looking like, I used to go around probably like the Duracell bunny, if anyone remembers those ads, or a headless chicken, but the permanently exhausted pigeon also shows, and you're trying to pretend, oh no, everything's fine, I'm grand. So yeah, time out. That was something I didn't take, and I've paid the price. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go to the casino, but it's no harm, maybe. I did go to play golf, learn to play golf, WIGS, Women in Golf, here at the local golf course. And of course, I didn't leave the mobile in the car. I brought it with me. So I'm constantly texting, is mom okay? Going for a walk. My friend came every evening, and she came because if she rang and said, we'll go for a walk, I'd say no. So she just arrived and we went for a walk. And that was probably the best thing that saved me, because if I didn't go out and talk to her and vent, because you have so many things building up, you have family issues, you'll get criticized by other siblings that you're not doing a good job, you don't know what you're doing, it should be done like this, but yet they're too busy to come and help and do it. So these are all things, of course, you learn as you go along, and you have to build your resilience. Carers as a whole, if you become a family carer, I believe it's a vocation. And I think there were 4 girls, and I know I was the only one that was going to do it. So we were a very resilient cohort of people. We have the ability to withstand adversity and to bounce back from difficult periods in our life. And we tap into the strengths and strong systems to overcome adversity and work through them. And I always describe myself, we bred the Connemara ponies here, my dad, and I suppose growing up and now looking at it, I always describe myself as the Irish draft, that big, heavy, strong horse, not like the thoroughbred that my sisters seem to be. So, carers have to learn to build up their reserves. And I think one of the big things that worked for me was in 2013, I heard of a course in NUIG with Professor Eamon O'Shea, social gerontology, and I went in. And to be honest, I hadn't a clue what was going on in the beginning. And I've said this several times, but that information is power. And I was able to start to challenge the medical professionals. I was able to ask questions. I could see what we needed. And it turns out that carers and those living with the diagnosis have very similar needs. And we know what we need to have an inclusive community. So we need those social networks. We need our friends. We need to connect with other members of the community. Neighbors start to stop calling because they don't know how to cope with it. They used to come and say, oh my God, look at the state of Angela. But Angela knew what they were saying. And I'd say, please don't say that. My mom understands. Going down to the local shops like the bank, the post office. And I got involved after this in building awareness, and the elevator program was one of the things that had come out. And I started to give talks to financial workers, the shops, the transport, various, and going to active retirement groups and speaking to various sports groups like GAA, whatever, because to get them to understand that they could buddy up with somebody who's got a diagnosis. Just because you got a diagnosis doesn't mean you have to sit at home. Or now, because of the younger onset, people can still remain at work. And that's so important that employers understand that, and that the person with the diagnosis understands that they have a right. They may not stay in the same job, but they can be slotted somewhere within the company. They are still very active and giving human beings in society. So I think the local groups, like yesterday, Sinead talked about the dementia cafes. And it's important to note as well, not everybody wants to be associated with the label dementia cafe. So I can't see why every cafe, every organization isn't embracing and connecting with us. And once you understand what's happening, and we need to connect with empathetic and understanding people who will remind us that we're not alone. And we have to take care of our bodies. We have to avoid negative people because they're only going to bring you down. And you have to help others and be proactive. So the home care, yesterday, Professor Eamon O'Shea made 2 comments. The home care without social interaction is not true care. And how true is this? And personhood is basic humanity. And that's what I would say with carers that came in when we eventually did get support. It took so long to build that up. And I was afraid to say, we don't like this carer. We don't get on with this carer. Of course, there was personality clashes. They came in, mom dragged out of the bed for a shower at 8 o'clock when she didn't want to shower. Now I understand. She didn't have to have a shower. I should have said, no, you can't take my mom out of bed. And I should have said, yeah, I don't want this carer. This is our home. And I think the private and the public sector have to learn that you have to buddy up the carer and the family. We're letting somebody into our home, which is the personal private space. And some of the private sector agencies don't want carers to build a relationship. And this is wrong, because that's what true care is built on, that relationship and that trust. So I think they're things that have to change as we're going forward. Living with dementia diagnosis in rural Ireland is my pet subject. And this is what I started in 2016 with the first conference I organised with NUIG. And I suppose this is where, after Mom passed away, this is how I grieved her. I couldn't understand she was gone. I know I just couldn't cope. Nobody ever came to visit me afterwards and say, how are you doing, Carmel? Are you okay? Nobody from any service came to me and said, do you need counselling? There is counselling available. I didn't know any of that. So this was my way. I had the privilege of hearing Helen Rochford-Brennan speak in Dublin, and I contacted her and she came and spoke. And then the following year she came again. And that's when she asked me, would I support her traveling in her advocacy work? And that was the start of a whole new life for me. It was just, it's been amazing. Helen has just been an inspiration. She's just, we were at an event a number of years ago, and a lady spoke, Patricia McFarlane, about gratitude. And I was going, gratitude, what's to be grateful for? And I wasn't in a good place that day. I was really angry, frustrated. Now, Mom was gone at this stage, and I was in the role of supporting Helen. And I thought, what has Helen got to be grateful for? But thank goodness I came out of that, and my glass is always half full. And I am so grateful that I had the opportunity and I was in a position to care for my mom. But I want you to know that living in rural Ireland, there are no supports. It's an urban-rural divide. It's a postcode lottery. Helen told us yesterday she has never had supports. And she was her husband's carer. Now that is disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. You're talking, yes, the Age Action Report has come out, nearly 500,000 people over 65 experience digital exclusion. That's not acceptable. And that's because we have no broadband in many areas. We have a lot of them have no digital skills, and a lot of people have no devices to connect with. And then you have such issues as manual dexterity, you have visual impairment, you have so many language barriers. We're not all English speaking as our first language. None of that is looked at. Then, and when you're I'm really going to rush this now, just a few more things. Bereavement, you're left when your loved one is gone, and you have that social isolation, the fatigue, the sadness, the fear, the lack of just life in general. You've no routine, you've no one calling. So you have to get back into life, try and reconnect. And one of the other things was I got involved with the Alzheimer Society, the DCCN. I'm involved with research in several different projects, and I was involved with the All Ireland Institute, Hospice Palliative Care, and that's where I learned about Mom was denied palliative care because she didn't have cancer. Well, rubbish. I found out everyone is entitled to palliative care. We're all entitled to have a comfortable death and be relaxed and pain-free. So silence is deafening when all these issues come up and nobody wants to talk about it. So I've given you some, that's my grief. You see, you do need to talk about it. I did find counselling. And the other thing I forgot to mention about my health, in 2018, I wasn't well. I knew there was something wrong. I was so tired. I just felt I had given up on life. And even Helen said to me, there's something wrong. And in April 2019, I was diagnosed with 2 types of breast cancer, and I went absolutely AWOL in the consultant's office. I said there was no way I had cancer. I wasn't having any of it. And it took me until my chemo and radiation, radiotherapy floored me in November, December. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I had to sit down. I had to chill. I could barely get up the stairs. And I just looked at life, and I saw where I'm going and decided what I'm doing. These are some helpful guides for you. And Judy Williams is coming on, she may be next, from the Alzheimer Society of Ireland. And she's going to talk about some of the work. And she's also, I have the helpline there, but she'll have the number, which is open, and it's a free service, and please use it. There's a sympathetic ear at the end of the line, and that's all we need sometimes. So thank you. And I just hope that you take your emotion and physical health. And I want the healthcare professionals listening, the private sector, public sector, and everybody to be mindful when you're talking to your patients and their carers, that you realize how they're feeling on the day. Thank you.
Carmel, amazing presentation.
Thank you.
There's a question that's come in for you. Would you say that to some extent the grieving process for a loved one with the dementia begins with the diagnosis, and that it is an illness that begins the process of taking them away before they pass away?
Well, probably. And in one way, I remember saying that my dad got cancer, my mom got dementia, and we didn't know what was wrong. If we had known a lot earlier, if we got an early diagnosis, we would have coped much better. Mom wouldn't have been terrified not knowing what was happening to her and trying to cover up and hide. And then when I met Helen and Kevin, and I got access to all those wonderful people, because I used to say, oh, I want to get cancer, let me out of here quick. I no longer fear a dementia diagnosis, and there is a chance I may get it. So no, I think it's all about education, understanding. Like, I would love to see, as Kevin said earlier, I want to see the dementia diagnosis like the cancer diagnosis. I don't want it hidden under the carpet. I came out, I said, I have breast cancer. Like, okay, it's like, I said, it's like the common cold, everybody has it. Why can't we say that about dementia? Let's get to that point.
Very good. No, I agree with you. Wonderful, yeah. Carmel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're now going to move on to Karen Borochowitz, so a completely new continent, the founder and executive director of Dementia South Africa. So Karen, over to you.
Thank you. So thank you very, very much. I really need to say thank you so much to Engaging Dementia, the event organizers and the sponsors, Home Instead, for being able to include us in this program. It's really exciting and very enlightening and inspiring to hear all these incredible journeys and all these amazing products, and how people with dementia are treated with dignity and with care, and with such vibrant organizations and leaders abroad. So Dementia is was started by myself way back in 2006. I had a mother who had Alzheimer's disease for 21 years. She was diagnosed when she was 62, and that was way back in the days when, you know, there was still so much myth and so much stigma still about the disease. And her doctor was one of those that just said, oh, you know what, it's a memory problem, it's fine, it's par for the course, she gets old, she might have depression, so what, just carry on. And it just got worse and worse and worse, until we finally did get a diagnosis, which really was quite liberating. So Dementia is an established brand in South Africa. And I just want to play you a quick clip from one of our radio awareness campaigns.
Every time he sees me, his eyes light up. I can almost hear his heart beat faster. He looks at me the same way he did when we first met. For him, It's love at first sight every day. For me, it's heartbreaking.
Loving someone who's living with dementia is not easy. For support, advice, or to make a donation, visit DementiaSA.org.
So our vision is very, very simple. It's building a South Africa where dementia is recognized and acknowledged using person-centered principles with respect, dignity for all that affected. And it's really started what we now call our Dementia Needs Action Now campaign. This has been running for many, many years, and virtually 2 years into our inception. It still runs, but unfortunately, South Africa is way behind what's happening in the European Union, et cetera, et cetera. Although we do have one dementia cafe, I think, that runs in Hout Bay in Cape Town. So that's where we are based. Even though our national helpline is around the country. So we have 9 core services, and this was all pre-COVID. However, then we had COVID. And COVID arrived with great vengeance. The only of the 9 services, we only have now 2 that we're able to run, and you know, our website and our telephone helpline, etc. But otherwise, we were in lockdown. Our social workers couldn't go and visit people in their homes. They weren't able to assist with any of the counselling, face-to-face counselling. So we really had to find something new. But let me just touch on what our traditional support group model was. We ran 18 to 21 support groups physically, where they met once a month at various geographical locations. It's led by a volunteer or a support group leader. They were given a kit, which included an attendance register, resources that to be handed out. And there were books that we circulated amongst some of the members. So the attendance could be anything between 5 to 25 people. And there were various factors that governed that. Some of the groups organized their own speakers or a movie, like a sharing and caring. We kept attendance registers with statistics for our governance, and some of the larger groups organized speakers on various topics. One of the greatest aspects of all of those was obviously the tea and cake and the socialization afterwards. And I do know that Kevin also did speak about that very early on in his keynote, where, you know, just let's get going and get together and meet people and hug and just know that that we can't live in this bubble of isolation anymore. So what were some of the challenges that we experienced in this in-person model? We experienced that people, you know, it was difficult to drive to the venue. You know, petrol is expensive or fuel is expensive. Sometimes there was a one-car household, so people had to be dropped off and then collected later on. One of the challenges was, who do we leave our loved one with? And usually only the primary caregiver or one member of the family attended the group. And if the sporting calendar, if there was a rugby match on that particular Saturday, you got nobody at the support group because they'd all be in front of the TV. The geographical location was also a bit of a hindrance because sometimes we couldn't find adequately or suitably qualified volunteer facilitators, because our facilitators are usually people that have either taken care of a loved one with dementia, or they are a nursing sister, or somebody with a medical background, an occupational therapist, or a psychologist. And sometimes, you know, really just we did feel that there had to be some kind of understanding, you know, a lived experience or understanding of people living with dementia to run the groups and to support. So the timing, you know, some groups were held during the week, which was challenging sometimes because of work commitments and children, et cetera, and other family commitments. And Saturdays traditionally in South Africa are seen as family and shopping days. So, you know, that really also, you know, was a bit of a downer. So this, led to our social workers being a lot busier in terms of counselling. But what we found was that it wasn't getting the entire family together. The entire family weren't singing from the same hymn sheet. They were kind of almost dislocated in a way, because it was fragmented. One person would attend the group, they would take the information back to the family. Nobody would listen to them because, oh, what do they know? So, that was really, but then enter the theme of your conference, opportunity out of adversity. And Greg Gelb is one of the members. It was one of the families that I counsel. And Greg's father has Lewy body dementia. And the very, very interesting thing is that I said to Greg, no, please, Greg, can I use your name in my presentation today? And he said, absolutely, with pleasure, not a problem at all. So, Greg, thank you so much for helping us develop or initiating it. And then being able to put it into some kind of action. So what did we know? Although that there were many unknowns about the actual the way in which we had to transform the way that our support groups met and etc. But we did know that people with living with dementia or loved ones with dementia needed some kind of help and support and counselling. And we knew that within every household, which is a little household here, a family was living. Many times it was a multi-generational household with grandparents, etc. But what we did know was that because a lot of families were working from home, there definitely was a PC or a tablet. There definitely was a smartphone, and there was also some kind of connection, internet connection, either fiber or whatever other connection there was. So we did know that everybody was at home. There was no traveling. Everybody was in lockdown. They didn't need carers. And the entire family could now join on the same platform in their own homes. And we could now get a message through and speak to families as a unit. And that was absolutely unbelievable. But we had to work out how this incredible technology worked. So the technology was there, and we took a lot of time to find best practice from some of the corporates that were using the platform. We attended many of the Zoom calls that they put on. A lot of YouTubing, a lot of how to do this, how to do that. And then we purchased a premium version of Zoom, and slowly we launched it as a pilot with a few people around, about 20 names of people that we essentially took from the formal support group model, because they kind of knew what the expectation was within the support group, and what the ultimate goal of it was. But it also helped us determine how we could do the nuts and bolts of how we were going to administrate it, etc. And we used WhatsApp essentially as our communication tool with members of the virtual support group. So we have a number of things that are requirements. Firstly, they need to send us an email and request to join. We have a PUPPY Act in South Africa, which is very similar to your GDPR, where they have to ask to be joined, otherwise it's seen as spam or so. And then they have to tell us why they needed to join. So we add them to the WhatsApp group, and a day before Thursdays at 1 o'clock, we send them the link to the Zoom call. We do not record those particular sessions. And as I say, it's held on a weekly basis. Remember, our formal support groups were held on a monthly basis, once a month. And then we had to establish a code of conduct on both platforms. So it had to be confidentiality was absolutely key, respectful, non-judgmental. People had to listen. before they actually spoke, needed to acknowledge others, no medical advice whatsoever, not whatsoever, no soliciting of services. So if you are selling something that is the be all and end all or the silver bullet of dementia, so absolutely no ways would it, can it go through our groups at all. And admin has to, there's two of us that are admin, we have to approve all the posts, and we have to acknowledge that each person and each family circumstances are unique. So the virtual support groups on a Thursday have approximately 20 to 30 people on the platform at a time. I've mostly run them, but we always have a social worker, a counsellor, and some of our support group counsellors help when I'm not able to be there, and they run them without me. And I think sometimes people enjoy those groups more than the others. But then we found that because of lockdown, there were many specialists and medical professionals who weren't open and weren't practicing, etc., etc. So, but there were a lot of questions that were still coming from people in the support groups. So we added webinars. We created a YouTube channel. We, as I mentioned, lockdown prevented access to medical experts. People from the virtual support group sent through their questions. So we would say, for example, we have a physio that we are going to be interviewing next week or might be live on the group. Send us some of your questions or things that you really want to know. We narrow those down, put them into some kind of organization for the physiotherapist or the occupational therapist or the audiologist or the podiatrist or whatever to answer. And then they would record that, and we would go through the webinar. We would, as I say, record these, and they were then posted up on the YouTube channel. The link then would be shared, on our various social media platforms. And just a few of the people that we've had on the group, a speech therapist speaking about dysphasia, dietary requirements, pain and pain management, law and curatorships. You're lucky in Ireland, you have an enduring power of attorney. South Africa, we don't have that. And we still, advocating quite anxiously for that. Neurologist, psychiatric geriatrician, and then we also had an epidemiologist because people were worried about COVID and how COVID was affecting South Africa, the Delta variant, and a whole lot of other things. So we still will be adding a lot more professionals to that as well. But also what it did was we realized that we had to increase our social media platform presence. We started to use Instagram, a greater presence on Facebook, which people are now also using as an area to post more questions that they necessarily don't know of, the existence of the virtual support group. So what has been the reach? So let's just have a look at some of the numbers. October 2020 was our, from March until October 2020, we had 46 participants. 6 months later, in April 2021, we had 112 participants. And we'll do another monitoring and evaluation and a theory of change again in December 2021, but that's just 2 months away. But we now currently have 151 participants. So you can just see how people have just absorbed and absolutely reached out for this technology. The only challenges that we do find are the very high cost of data in South Africa. And then also technology is not everybody's friend. I've taken from our theory of change, so the copies are not so great. I'm very sorry about that. But you can see here the 93% of the 46 respondents said that there was improved support. That 88% of 43 of them said that they had improved their knowledge of dementia. and 90% of the 44 indicated that they were able to apply the advice that was shared with peers on the group in a real life situation at home, which is really, I mean, you know, that's really what you want. So just two of the comments. Reason for participating: I wasn't coping as a carer and I needed advice and assistance. And as the sickness is, that's somebody from Gauteng in Johannesburg. And as the sickness is slowly getting worse, I took the advice of DSA, Dementia SA, by getting a caregiver in for my wife. This has changed my life to the better, and as I've cared for her for the past 7 years. That's somebody in the Western Cape. So let's just have a look at our organizational reach. Facebook, we were up by 79 followers. YouTube, 70, up by 51 people, 188 Twitter followers. There's 54 nationalities that access our website. 1,372, up by 1,036 views on our website. And Instagram, we're up by 59 followers. This was 6 months ago. And you can see that on our virtual support group and our webinars, this is the crux of the matter. This is the reason why we actually, you know, have found the platform really, really great, because we are in 5 provinces. 5 provinces are represented on our virtual support group. We have about 6 or 7 people that are based internationally. So either in the UAE, Great Britain, New Zealand, Australia, in America, there's a lady that joins us. And these are all people that have loved ones or family members in South Africa who really just want to be able to get a handle on what it is that the other family members are dealing with, or how they can help and support their loved ones. 96% of the people accessing the WhatsApp and the virtual support group indicated that their needs were met. Webinars that we hosted in 2020, we hosted 20 of them. And up until very recently, we can add another 5 to the 7, so that's 11 webinars that we've held in 2021. Here is one of the gentlemen that attends our support group, and his name is George.
Some days are good, sometimes not so good, and every day I miss her. It was tough initially. It's almost like you know, when you go to a light switch, the light is on, you just flip the switch and then there's nothing. And that, I can't handle that day. I can't handle that. There's a prayer that goes, you must accept the things you can't change. So that's where I am today, just accepting the things that I can't change. I lost my wife more than a year ago. And I lose a little bit more of her every day.
So I think for us, it was the difficulty transforming us. So let difficulty transform you, and it will. In my experience, we just need help in learning how not to run away. So thank you so much, Kim, Manuela, and Home Instead, for having us and hosting us and allowing us to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. I'm now going to introduce our next speaker, who is Judy Williams of the Alzheimer Society of Ireland, and Philip, I'm probably going to say your name wrong, Philip Connaughton, dance artist. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Kim, and thank you to everybody at Engaging Dementia for a wonderful conference so far. Good morning, everybody. We're delighted to be here. My name is Judy Williams, and I'm an Advocacy, Engagement and Participation Officer at the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland, with responsibility for the Dementia Carers Campaign Network. And presenting with me this morning is Philip Connaughton, dance artist and choreographer, and we're here to present Yes, But Do You Care? So what is Yes, But Do You Care? It is a cross-disciplinary collaborative art project by visual artist Marie Brett, working with dance artist and choreographer Philip Connaughton, with contributions from members of the Dementia Carers Campaign Network. The work explores the experiences of family carers, the human right to make a bad decision, and Ireland's new capacity legislation. So what is the DCCN? First of all, or the Dementia Carers Campaign Network, or DCCN as we're more normally known. It is an advocacy group for those who have experience caring for a loved one with dementia. Set up in 2013, the group aims to be a voice of and for dementia carers in Ireland, and to raise awareness of issues affecting families living with dementia. The group is facilitated and supported by the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland and is overseen by a committee of current and former carers who take responsibility for driving the work of the network. Members of the DCCN have participated in research on dementia and the needs of family carers, spoken at conferences and events, met with political representatives to campaign for policy change, and taken part in awareness-raising activities, including national and local media work. In 2019, visual artist Marie Brett contacted the DCCN to ask our members to contribute to the artwork by sharing stories of their lived experience as a family carer or supporter of someone living with dementia. As one of the aims of the DCCN is to ensure that carer voice is amplified, this was an interesting and exciting proposition as a different way to do this. Our members were not sure what to expect from the experience, but many of them were happy to contribute to the project, and we'll see a little bit later some of their responses of what it meant to them. Other carers supported by the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland also participated in this project, so there were many different voices and different experiences. The carers met with Marie a number of times, both individually and in groups, to share aspects of their lived experience. During this period, Marie gathered numerous stories and led writing workshops, and over many months, she combined the carers' writings into a distilled down collaborative story. Marie then worked with dance artist and choreographer Philip Connaughton to bring these stories to life through dance and movement. Our advocates and carers also had the opportunity to meet directly with Philip to learn how their collective stories were being portrayed. And we're going to hear a little bit later from Philip how he managed to weave our stories and his own caring story into this work. The DCCN was one of the contributors to the creative process, but Marie and Philip also consulted with experts in law, arts, advocacy, and human rights to inform this work. The work was funded by the Arts Council via an Artist in the Community Award managed by CREATE, the National Development Agency for Collaborative Arts, the Bank of Ireland Begin Together Arts Fund in partnership with Business to Arts, Dublin City Council Arts Office, and Dublin Dance Festival, and we're very grateful for their funding. The work was supported by the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland, the Irish Museum of Modern Art, and an extensive panel of specialist advisors, a number of experts who contributed to the contextual written pieces, and several individual and organisational stakeholders, all of whom are named on the Yes But Do You Care website. More about the website later. So what were the aims of the Yes But Do You Care project? To publicly explore potentially challenging aspects of care in Ireland today through sharing of reimagined hidden stories. This involves exploring the possible implications of the new capacity legislation for family carers, the Assisted Decision-Making Capacity Act 2015. To build new audiences and offer topical thinking and reflection space, including offering panel discussions and Q&As for audiences to understand the process of the artwork and the motivation of family carers to be involved. And these Q&As are also available on the Yes But Do You Care website. To encourage philosophical consideration of how human rights can be promoted and protected in Ireland, and also share an understanding that rights and greater capacity may have unintended consequences that need to be explored. The later stages of the collaboration between the DCCN and Marie and Philip had to be carried out via video link because of COVID-19 public health guidelines in Ireland at the time. The public health guidelines also meant that the artwork itself had to shift from the intended live performance with an audience to a reimagined artwork, which was a filmed version, streamed by the Irish Museum of Modern Art for 2 weeks in April 2021. This new version became an installation, combining live dance and performance with sculptural, video and sound elements, while also responding to the huge warehouse space. And now we would like to play you a little clip from the work that was made.
Everything gets lost and I get blamed. He forgets. Then he remembers he forgot. He's cold, but opens all the windows. Sometimes he's so far in the dream that I just can't reach him. He says the room's filling with thousands of snakes. He jumped out of the window and was 3 miles down the road. I sit in the kitchen, crying, hidden behind closed doors. That's the part of caring that's forgotten about. Where are we? Israel. Where are we? Syria. Where are we? London. You learn how to cope. Trying to find the dog that's already died. Trying to go home. Where did you go? 10 times a day. I'm told I'm lucky because he's obsessed with the housework. White lies and guilt. Accusation, justification. His right to make a bad decision. I looked after him for 3 years, a week, and 3 days. Whether it's your mother, your sister, your uncle, your aunt, you live with the disease as well. I'm not allowed to get old.
Now I'd like to hand over to Philip to tell you about his involvement in this work.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Philip Connaughton, and as Judy said, I'm a dance artist and choreographer based in Ireland. So I first worked with Marie in 2016 when she asked me to respond physically to her filmic artwork, Egress, at the Irish Museum of Modern Art. That work explores ideas of how ambiguous loss theory relates to a lived dementia experience. By pure coincidence, I was on my own personal journey as a carer for my mum who was living with dementia. And it was a very interesting experience because when you see a work of art, the idea is that you just see it and respond to it in the moment. So I wasn't fully I wasn't fully aware of how I'd react. And when I started to dance, I started to cry, and it wasn't sad, but I just realized that I'd been holding a lot of tension around, you know, the pressures that everybody goes through in those circumstances. I think this opened up a little door for me in my own work. And, you know, as life seeps into your work and work seeps into your life, I started to kind of make my own work around themes of dementia, particularly from a personal mother-son perspective. And I made 2 works, Assisted Solo and Mama Festa memorializing 2 dance works that kind of traveled between France and Ireland. And so when Marie came back to me and asked me to work with her and the Dementia Carers Campaign Network on this project, I was really very excited for several reasons. I suppose the potential issues arising around a new piece of legislation like the Capacity Act and how those issues need to be considered was really eye-opening to me, you know, and especially how, you know, with a new law, like the cases that arise within the first year of that new piece of legislation really define how we're going to deal with that in the long run. It was just something I'd never really realized. Also, just the chance to engage with a wider community of carers through the Dementia Carers Campaign Network. It's such an important it's such an important group of people, and I think had I had that earlier, it would have been incredibly helpful to me. So it was really important to realize that that existed and that resource was there. The bigger picture response to what living with dementia means also, until now, my experience both as a carer was from a very personal perspective, and I was really unaware of the different challenges faced by different people throughout the country. And I think that is one of the things that has come up again and again in talking to other people, you know, that the sense of isolation that exists. One of the members of the DCCN refers to it as the silent scream. And that was, it really resonated with me and many people, I think. Marie started by collating interviews she had made with the DCCN members from around the country. The interviews were then edited down into specific sections of conversation, and I began to respond to them physically. We were now in level 5 lockdown. Marie was in West Cork and I was in Dublin, so it was really the strangest dance rehearsal because, you know, she was on a little computer in the corner of her room and I was throwing myself all over the place and she was shouting at me and I couldn't hear her, but it was, you know, it was the same for everyone, but I'd never experienced that before. So when levels were lifted slightly, we were delighted to have the opportunity to rehearse outdoors at IMA, at the Irish Museum of Modern Art, at the People's Pavilion. They had kind of a tent, so regardless of the weather, we could kind of an open tent, so we could kind of work there and people could kind of come and sit and have coffee and watch what we were doing. Again, personally, it was fascinating to hear and work with other people's experiences. So many differences and yet so much in common. It was also very important for us to constantly get feedback from the DCCN collaborators through meetings on Zoom. And of course, when we were at IMA, they could come and see the work develop live. It was one of the strange things when we were there was, of course, from being on stage all the time to suddenly not being able to be on stage and not have an audience. But then suddenly you had people right beside you on the grass, and you know, we're trying things out. So some things might work or some might not. It's about making mistakes and figuring out where you need to go. And I was kind of going crazy on the grass at one stage, trying out some kind of movement, and a father and son came over, and the father said to me, the son said to the father, "What's he doing?" And the father said, "Oh, I think he's a contemporary dancer." And he said, "Oh, really? It's interesting, no?" And he said, no, I don't like that. I much prefer Childish Gambino." While I was kind of trying to concentrate on what I was doing, but it was interesting to have that input so close. But it was a very interesting experience. But I think getting back to the actual work, when you're telling or expressing somebody else's story, whether it's my mom or somebody I've never met or one of the people that I've spoken to via the DCCN, this comes with a real sense of responsibility. You know, you have to constantly ask yourself, are we doing this correctly? Are we giving their story justice? So it was really important to constantly check in and make sure that everyone was okay with how we were responding to their stories. You can't tell every story. You have to decide and pick, and you know, you're never going to cover every element of what it is to be a carer in Ireland or to live with dementia. But so you have to be very careful that it's you're doing it as best you possibly can. The body in motion is a very strange thing. I mean, different movements have different associations for different people. It's generally non-narrative, but watching movement is not a passive process. I mean, it requires the viewer to actively engage with what they are seeing and ask themselves what it is saying to them on a personal level. However, it was really about looking for that common physical ground that people might recognize and relate to. There's always the potential for ambiguity, and this somehow seems fitting when dealing with the complexities of dementia. So I think we're now going to show another little section of the work where Marie asked me to work with sticks as well. I mean, you can see what it means for you. Let's have a look.
If you would like to view the artwork in full, you can visit the Yes But Do You Care website, where there is also a series of supporting digital and printed contextual materials.
Yes, and separate to the work you've just seen, an additional filmic piece was made, which is now in the Irish Museum of Modern Art's National Collection.
As I said towards the beginning of the presentation, the DCCM members were not sure what to expect from this project. We are more used to attending policy consultations or lobbying politicians, so this was a very different way of amplifying the carer voice. But working with Marie and Philip, we felt we were in safe hands. The participants were deeply moved by taking part in this project, as you can see from these responses. Moran said, "An excellent rendition, capturing the inside voice on the outside. I really found that each piece resonated something deep inside as a carer." Ray said, "I found the process incredibly cathartic and it released a lot of inner feelings, and I was skeptical at first. I think it's a fantastic piece of work. It's really poignant." We are very grateful to Marie and Philip for giving us the space to share our stories, to hear our voices, and for curating our lived experiences in such an original and creative, yet thoughtful and sensitive way. If you'd like to view the filmed event in full, or for more information, please visit yesbutdoyoucare.ie. If you'd like more information on the Dementia Carers Campaign Network or to join us, please contact advocacy@alzheimer.ie or follow us on Twitter @DCCNIRL. I'd just like to say thank you on behalf of Philip and myself for listening to and watching our presentation. And if you've been affected by anything in our presentation, the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland's National Helpline is available 6 days a week on 1-800-341-341. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy and Philip. That was gorgeous. I really enjoyed that. Very touching.